Yeah, I was going to say that I think that's a really great question from Ross, and to me it speaks so much to that idea of responding to your community and making sure that we talk about these themes as not being from one particular school of thought. These are, the way that we can teach this in classes and the way that we can teach this, whether it's explicitly in SEL programs like at Ocean Grove or whether it's in a humanities class, is ensuring that we are, as educators, that we are looking to all of the schools of thought when it comes to these issues and to any issues really, but especially that. I also secretly think we should be teaching religion in state schools, but that's another soapbox for another day, because there is so much to learn, and I think it goes so much to me to inclusivity and to having truly inclusive schools means that we need to revisit things around our curriculum to make sure that those voices are, and that those histories and that those philosophies are coming through our schools. I think it's really important.
Thanks, Shannon. I'll throw to Kristen now.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that question, Ross, and thanks, Nathan and Shannon, for those answers. I agree with what's been said, and I think it just, it comes down to the idea of what's meaningful, and so many thinkers and leaders have been asking that question, what does make for a meaningful life, and what does make for a meaningful connection with one another? And, there are all the people that you named there, but then there's also, of course, Indigenous worldviews too, and all the perspectives that we can learn from about what it means to be well connected. And I think just listening to the two schools, Ocean Grove and Prawn, and how, all the ways that you're doing things, you're doing that implicitly through what you're doing, but you're also really making it explicit. And so I think that's really wonderful to see that happening. And I think even just, having very short conversations with students too about, what is this based on? So, what are the many different ways of being and the ways of thinking that these, what the why again, why are we doing this? And just bringing that into sort of everyday conversations, that it doesn't need to be a whole other, content lesson on schools of thought, but just infusing that this is one way of being and thinking, and this is what this is based on. And I think I see that happening from what you both schools have just described, and I think, Ross, what you're getting to can be part of that too.
Thanks, Kristen. Scott and Andy?
Yeah, big question there, Ross. Thanks for that one. You've stretched my thinking. And probably a couple of the key words that have already been mentioned, the way of being. We did a little bit of work with Russell Quaglia from the Quaglia Institute around student voice and agency, and trying to, I guess, have the kids help us with the decision-making processes around the school with student voice and agency. And I guess the challenge for us as school leaders and for schools is to bring in our school 406 different families, 406 different variations on what family and different belief systems, different structures, and try to build a culture that for 6.5 hours a day is real positive for those kids. And I guess my question, and I don't like necessarily answering a question with a question, but the challenge for us as principals is how do we engage the parents to play a significant role in answering Ross's question as well? We sit around as educators and we talk a lot. We're really, really good at asking 1,000 questions, and sometimes we don't get to the answers, the how. We don't get a chance to actually implement it. So, I don't want to be facetious when I say that, but I guess, Ross, I'd encourage you to reach out to your school, your kids' school, and let them know what you can bring to the table, and what the community can bring to the table.
And just to add to what Scott said, I did quote in the message to you, Ross, and I'd like to share this, that something that Confucius said. He said, life is simple, but we insist on making it complicated.
So true. Well done, Andy. And now I'll go to Ragni. She said, great message. Congratulations to
Sorry,
Ocean
Gail,
Grove.
can I just, I think John wanted to comment on that.
Gail, can I just...
My apologies,
Sorry.
John.
That's all right. I'm sorry. I want to make it fairly simple. And Ross, what you ask is unbelievably important. In a relational sense, we can form a relationship on the basis of two bases, if you like. First of all, you can form a relation of contribution, where you give and not take, or you can be take and not give. Now, these are really simple things. Every person who has presented today is a giver. And this is unbelievably important. Confucius wanted this, Aristotle wanted it. What is meaning in life? And this is, if you like, this is Viktor Frankl's work. If you give, not only do you improve the life of someone else, but you improve your life. If you take, you inhibit the life of another, and you certainly inhibit your life. And the philosophers have asked us to look very carefully in our context on how we can make a contribution. And this is the brilliance of Ocean Grove, the brilliance of Paran. This is the brilliance of what schools bring to communities. They are, in fact, the essence of any cultural change. There's no other organisation now in the Western world where it is compulsory for attendance. And we're dealing with young children, and we're going to craft a culture that is going to be beneficial to them and to their offspring. So really, Ross, that is a profoundly important question you asked. So thank you.
Thanks, John. And just going back to, actually, Ragni's was a comment, not a question. She just wanted to congratulate both schools, you know, to be able to hear these stories and how amazing. But I suppose from her perspective, how do we go about introducing the concept of RBE and building this culture at her school, a secondary college?
I'm happy to, well, let me jump in quickly. And interestingly, John knows about, I don't always like labels of things, to be honest. So for us, Shannan and I, to be honest, are probably not explicitly talking about RBE per se, but we are building, it's with the work that we're doing, but it's right for us. So I think it's got to come in secondary schools. It's got to come from a commitment to what we talked about, to positivity, to relationships, to kindness, to learning about those sorts of things, and to a fundamental core belief that students won't learn in the absence of a relationship, in the absence of a positive, constructive, caring relationship. So that's the first point. And I suspect that most schools are already, most of us who come to work in schools choose to come to work with young people because we are kind, we do want to make a difference. But schools sometimes get in a way where that perhaps isn't working as well. That has to be the first point, to get to that point where we're on that kind of same page, if you like, where we get that is the fundamental precondition for all else, and then we can go a bit further. And I think schools will often need, I mean, John can't be in every school, but that guidance of mentors from others, people like John, people like Larissa, people who are with you, but schools need to intentionally reach out and to leverage support. But I think we need to come from the fundamental precondition for all else, and then on we go. And then you'll end up with something like RBE or something like, or something that works for you. But it has to start with that discussion first of all.
Thanks, Nathan. I'm going to throw to Scott and Andy as well on this one. But before I do, I just want to add just a reminder to everyone in the room that our intention around RB2 was, and John was very clear about that when he has conversations with people that make approaches to pursue this pathway, the way forward as we call it, is that everyone's context is different, and whatever that may look like for that particular school community will be slightly different. So we have some schools that have onboarded with one component, particularly for particular year levels, for example, because I just don't have capacity right this moment to do a bigger piece. As you can see at Ocean Grove, they're doing a whole school approach. And so everyone does it slightly different. So over to you, Scott and Andy.
Oh, you just about said everything I was going to say anyway. You just said it better. I guess for Ragni, I suppose, have a look and ask your staff, what's the biggest frustration you've got? And I guess, as a school leader, we go through all these models of change, and I really like Cotter's 8-step model of change. And one of the steps in there is creating that sense of urgency. And if you're talking to enough staff at your school and you realise that relationships seem to be the issue, well, there's your urgency. So now what do we do about it? And as Andy did with our staff, we got onto the podcast. What one was it again?
On Generation Next.
Generation Next. Staff listened, threw it to us first. We had to listen to it, took staff through it. Then we got John online. And look, Ragni, your staff only have to listen to John's voice and they'll be hooked. So don't worry about it. You'll get him, no problems.
And I'll add further too, Ragni, might be helpful is when you go and have a look at the RBE platform on the Parents Victoria website, we've already done, thanks to Kristen at Monash, has been so kind to allow us to publicly share the lecture we did with some initial teacher educators this month. And that in itself, I mean, yes, it might run for about 37 minutes, but it's it's an amazing lecture just to give people a flavour of what we're endeavouring to do and what we're doing to support teachers, parents and students. And added to that too, we've got the 2-page flyer, as I mentioned earlier, that we've designed thanks to the likes of Nathan, that helped us with questions about what principals would be needing in that first sort of iteration if a parent was to hand that to them. So we totally get it at Parents Victoria. Schools are busy, they're really challenged at the moment, but we know that, as John would say, these are his word, we all want to lead with an intention to care. So it's how we do that. Scott, is that a new hand?
Yes, it is. It's my hand this time.
Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, that's all right. So I was going to say also, sort of following on from what you said, Gail, that schools are a busy place. So when I started thinking about how to implement RBE into our school, I had to give staff the time without saying, here's something extra. I gave them a meeting and sent the link, and we all watched the link in Teams and then discussed it. And then we had John do a Zoom meeting with us in a staff meeting. And quotes started appearing around the staff room, around the school about relationships, how important they are. Starting to sort of feed it around the school. Now we have a lot of kindness messages and quotes around the school, kindness cards. So rather than saying to staff, right, we're changing right away, it was little by little by little. And now it's starting to become into the conversation. So I know when it's coming to conversation when our kids in grade 2 are presenting to the whole school about kindness. They're talking about how they want our school to be. And I heard the word kindness from our grade 2 kids, I would say at least 30 times. So that's when I now see it starting to get into the school, into the community. So the little by little by little. That's how we did it.
And then you get these sorts of things that turn up, on your desk when you're not in your office, from the little ones, and we've got a pile of them. And then our grade 2s, they stood up at assembly last week and they gave the rest of the school a bit of a clip, just a friendly reminder about being kind in the playground and what it looks like, what it feels like for a grade 2 kid when it is unkind. So they're very, very explicit. And I guess one of the other things that we've gone and done, more so using one of the department tools, the pivot survey, we apply that across grades 3 to 6 in its purest sense, but then we've modified that down in a prep 1-2, 4 or 5 questions. And our grade 2 team found that kindness was the issue, socialising, all that sort of stuff. So they've actually set about a FISO cycle, so linking it back to what we do in our jobs, that framework for improving student outcomes. They evaluated and they found out and diagnosed what the issue was. They've set about some work. Recently, actually it's tomorrow night, they present their findings. So they resurvey the kids to find out what they've done or what has improved and see if it's changed any of the data sets. And I guess, from my point of view too, as I've been the recipient, I'm fortunate enough to work under some really good principals, and I had one that would always write handwritten notes. And it's a practice that I've tried to continue. I've dropped off. I just said to Andy before, I've got to get back onto this, but some of your hard nut teachers that are out there, and I'm thinking of one here who I try to get a couple of these little notes out throughout the year. But I wonder how this is going to be received. This teacher, she's ongoing, been here for a long time, did some good stuff, wrote up one of these little notes. The two of them sit pride of place in her little office area. You know, so don't underestimate the power of the pen. Some nice words. Yes, it might take you a little bit longer as a principal or even as a parent to write something nice that, you know, your kids' teachers have done. Just say thank you. You know, we don't ask for a lot, and acknowledgement. A lot of us, Andy's got 3 kids, I've got 3 kids. They're at different schools, and as a leader, you know, I walk around the school and I try and acknowledge as many kids as I can, whether it's a pat on the back, a high five, ruffle of the hair, because I hope that someone at my kids' school is doing that because I'm not there with them. And every time, you know, if I'm doing a school tour and someone needs to have their shoelaces done, I'll do the shoelaces up because that kid's already invested in our school. But it also models to potential people coming in, hey, this school, whether you're the principal or whoever, they're going to take care of my kids. So I guess it's the actions that we do as school leaders, but it's also the actions that parents can do that are very, very simple. You know, a quick message back on Seesaw, hey, thanks for inspiring the kid to do this. You know, they've come home raving about it. That just makes a teacher's day, as opposed to opening up a Seesaw message or an email and taking a big deep breath and going, is this going to be a positive or a negative? So I guess there's a lot that the parents can do in small doses that are going to help teachers and principals do our job better and ultimately build those really strong relationships.
I'm just doing a quick little scan of all our presenters. Anyone else want to add anything further? John, is there a couple more words you'd like to add? You're good. Probably, I think this person actually hasn't put it in the Q&A, but I am going to read it out because I think it was just such lovely feedback for you all. And it was just, you know, things like, you know, fabulous to see along with how education value is created together. Fran, that's about via the engagement triangle and how real change happens. Empowerment is one of the 3 key practices. Things like great to hear from the parent when you hear parents so clearly articulate how education can and should be. Their voice should obviously be heard within the department in every possible way. And as it happens to some extent, the voice of consumers and health. So people are, you know, making these interlinks and these observations as they've been listening to you all. And I just think that's fabulous. And I really do wish to thank, you know, all our presenters today and their contributions. And I also want a huge shout out to our participants that have really thought about their questions and to provoke us and also to make us add some further.